Senator Graham, it is great to see you again.
Steve, thank you. I appreciate this invitation to come back, which is the highest honor that anybody, particularly a politician, can get, to be invited back.
Well, it's great to have you. We've had you here several times, and we have you here today as the author of I think, a great read, Keys to the Kingdom. It's great because it's good reading. I love spy novels, but it's also great because the author was the chairman of the United States Senate Intelligence Committee, so there's a lot of depth to it as well. Tell us why you wrote the book.
I wrote the book because I tried to tell the story of the Saudi involvement in 9/11 in a nonfiction form. We wrote it up in an 800-page report of the congressional inquiry into 9/11. The key chapter on the Saudis was totally censored. I tried again in a book called Intelligence Matters. Some of the parts of that were also censored. So I was finally, out of my frustration, I decided I'm going to write this as a novel. I'm not going to represent that it's full truth reality, but with that, I think I can tell the story and the readers can get a sense of where the fact begins and ends and where fiction takes off.
Well, interestingly, when I read The Keys to the Kingdom, I thought, wow, some of this is nonfiction. Some of this is fiction, but I know that you still have the highest security clearances, so you had to have this book reviewed by somebody before it was printed, right?
Yes, I am on the CIA's External Advisory Board, and as such, am required to submit anything I write about the intelligence community for pre-publication review. Every time I finished a draft of this novel, it took 5 years and there were multiple drafts, I would submit them for review. This final version, it's in print, got an all-clear signal from that pre-publication view, so I've told my wife I will not go to Atlanta or Leavenworth or any other federal facility because I disclose national secrets.
Well, let's just talk about writing a novel. I mean, it doesn't surprise me and hasn't surprised me that you wrote some nonfiction books, but a novel is got to be a different kind of process. Has it been fun?
Yeah.
Tell me about writing a novel.
Well, it's been fun. It's been actually harder than the nonfiction. With a nonfiction book, you generally are writing about things that happened in the past, and so you know the plot line, where it began, what the middle, what the end was. Whereas with a novel, you've got 300 plus blank pages, and you have to fill it in yourself. But that was part of the challenge. It also requires a surprising amount of just basic research. If you look at the back of the book, the acknowledgments, I think they're maybe 3.5 pages of people that I consulted with to be sure everything as simple as what are the ingredients in a Spanish paella to how would a Boeing 777 look from the ground if a bomb had just gone off in its cargo hold. So on those and scores of other issues, I spent time researching it with experts.
And I'm sure that you had to, after you read something or you talked to an expert, you had to let your imagination flow and get a verbal picture, if you will, that you could translate to paper.
Yeah, when the expert tells you, here's what the plane would look like if it blew up, he'll tell you in a fairly technical sense. You've got to be able to be honest to the technical facts, but also describe it in a way that will be interesting to the reader.
Well, let me ask you kind of a personal question, because in the novel, there's a character quite like you, former United States Senator. He writes an op-ed that's kind of controversial, and not too far into the novel, I was kind of surprised that former United States Senator is assassinated, and he has a funeral.
Mm-hmm. In Tallahassee.
In Tallahassee, and he's, I think, maybe buried in Tallahassee, but whatever, I couldn't help but think about you, and that you were contemplating your own mortality, and you had to think through a funeral. Did you have to go through that?
Steve, I'm a little surprised that you would come to that conclusion. There are very big differences between Senator John Billington in this book and anybody that you know in real life. First, Billington had 5 daughters, and Adele and I only have 4 daughters.
Okay.
But more importantly, Billington is dead, and I don't think I am.
No, I wouldn't say you are either. I'll let the readers decide, okay? Let me get serious for a moment. I kind of took these 2 books, Intelligence Matters and also Keys to the Kingdom. And how would you, by the way, compare the 2 books?
Well, Intelligence Matters was written in 2004 after I had been chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee during 9/11 and the run-up to the Iraq War. It asked a lot of questions. Keys to the Kingdom was written between 2006 and 2011. It gives some answers to the questions that are asked, answers that I could not give in a book of nonfiction.
All right, I'm going to put some questions to you that I kind of derived after reading both, if I could. All right. Is it your contention that the Saudi government, reaching up to maybe the highest levels, helped to finance, either directly or indirectly, the training of some of the hijackers that attacked the Twin Towers and the Pentagon?
I describe the book as being 40% fact, with the names of living people changed, 40% fiction and 20% a mixture. What you've just described is largely in the factual part. What we do know is that an agent of the Saudi government approached 2 of the future hijackers, encouraged them to move to San Diego with the representation that he would provide them with significant support. He did. He got them an apartment, paid for it. He got them flying lessons, paid for it. He introduced them to a network of influential Saudis in Southern California. He also had his salary supplemented both through a ghost job that he had with a Saudi contractor, got paid, never showed up to work, and directly from a fund in the Saudi embassy in Washington. So I would say there was very close and unquestioned relationship between one Saudi agent and 2 of the hijackers. What's not known is, was there similar support given to the other 17 hijackers? And if so, if not, why would these 2 out of the 19 have been selected for such special support?
Well, you could take another jump logically and say, would then the Saudi government have been aware that there would be an attack?
I don't think it's necessary to go that far. I think what happened was that bin Laden recognized that he was about to give these 19 people a very difficult assignment. It would be like, Steve, if you and I were about to be parachuted into, let's say, Yemen. I don't speak Arabic. I don't believe you do. I've never been to Yemen. I don't know if you have or not. Don't know much about the culture. We got to live there for maybe as long as 18 months. While we're there, we complete the final planning, we practice, and then we execute a plot as complex as 9/11. What do you think the chances of us doing that? Not high.
Not high.
And he realized that that was true for his 19, and so he said, I need somebody who can give them support, assist in their maintenance of their anonymity, and lead them through the culture that they're going to be living in. And that somebody became a series of agents that Saudi Arabia has had in the United States since at least the middle of the 1990s, whose job it was to look after Saudi students in the U.S. who might be plotting a revolution against the monarchy similar to the one that happened against the Shah of Iran in 1979. So that's what I think happened, and that bin Laden went to the monarchy and said, if you don't give me your agents to assist these guys I'm going to put in, I'm not going to tell you why I'm putting them in the United States, but if you don't help them, then I'm going to lead a revolution against you, just as those students did against the Shah 20 years ago.
So that was the Saudi motivation.
That was to survive was the motivation.
Well, let's talk about the motivation of the United States government in perhaps engaging in a major cover-up of the Saudi action. I think you believe that that happened. Why did it happen?
Yeah, it clearly happened. There were a number of incidents where the U.S. government went out of the way to protect Saudis. Maybe the best known is when almost 100 Saudis were flown out of the United States at a time when other commercial aviation was grounded right after 9/11, and when the FBI said there were people on that plane that we wanted to talk to about what they knew about 9/11. That's just one example of the degree of cover-up. Now, why? I suggest a reason, but I'm not going to tell you because your readers won't want to have the plot to disclose too early. There was an interesting story in the press within the last few days where Richard Clarke, who was the head of the counterterrorism office both in President Clinton and President George W. Bush's administration, said that he thought the reason for the cover-up was that the CIA had bungled this whole situation, beginning when they failed to inform the FBI that they knew that there were hijackers coming into the United States, and that this was all an effort to cover their ineptitude by covering up the Saudi involvement.
Last question. Do you believe that perhaps with the covert assistance of the United States government that Saudi Arabia is developing a nuclear weapon capability?
Steve, I don't know about that, but let me tell you what I do know. At the May meeting this year of the World Health Organization, the United States was trying to put the lid on some pathogens that could be used for weaponized biological weapons of mass destruction. One of those is smallpox. We had a resolution that would have required every country in the world to declare that they either were free of smallpox or that they would destroy any smallpox that they had within the next 5 years. One of the opponents of that was Iran. Not surprisingly, if they're trying to get a nuclear weapon, that they'd also be interested in a biological weapon. But what was surprising was that Saudi Arabia was one of Iran's major supporters, assisting their arch enemy and dismissing the concerns of what is supposed to be their closest ally, the United States of America. Now, you can interpret why they did that. One interpretation is maybe they are trying to get a biological weapon.
Let's go to break. We're talking with Senator Bob Graham about his new book, Keys to the Kingdom, and other topics. We'll be right back.